for some reason, everyone seems comfortable talking about leaks now, so I might as well chime in since I follow leaks somewhat regularly. If you don't want spoilers or leaks, please click off this video now, but I think most of you watching probably already know what's going on. So TLDR, StarRail seems to be testing a global passive feature in the current 3.2 beta with Castorus, where just by pulling Castorus, your account gains a permanent buff regardless if you actually use her in your team. And this is a horribly stupid move because it opens up a Pandora's box that allows for more power creep, more FOMO, and more predatory tactics. And if this goes live, then Hoyo is really shooting themselves in the foot. No, actually they already shot themselves in the foot with even the idea of a global passive. If this makes it to the live servers, then they're basically shooting themselves in the head because this will probably kill the game for a large portion of players. And if not immediately, it will over time. Because maybe most people won't care at the start, but there's no world I can imagine where Hoyo does not somehow power creep this global passive and start making it crazier and crazier. And just a few weeks ago, we all thought they finally acknowledged the insane power creep in the game, where every new character being released has to one-up the previous character, to the point where 4-star only clears seem to be impossible nowadays, and teams of only E0 1.x characters also never get showcased anymore. I know I'm going off topic now and I'm no longer talking about the global passive thing, but this whole thing seems tone deaf, especially because people have been complaining about the direction the game's been going for a long time now. And this is coming from someone who can still comfortably clear endgame content, but the problem is the way I'm doing it is not the way I want to do it. I want to be feeling this powerful with characters that I like, but instead I'm stuck using characters that are flavor of the month, because the difference between a Fei Xiao clear and a Blade clear is like 3 cycles. And that's just talking about DPS characters. Obviously DPS characters being power crept is a tale as old as time. The problem is, now we're seeing even support characters be power crept at a really fast rate. So back when Ron Mei was released in version 1, everyone rightfully thought that she was insanely game breaking and future proof. She was a huge leap from previous supports in the game like Bronya and Tingyun because she provided team-wide buffs and was very universal. And she was being compared to characters like Kazuha from Genshin Impact. If you guys aren't familiar with Genshin, Kazuha was an insanely powerful support character released in version 1 of Genshin, and remained top of the meta pretty much up until Shilonen's release in version 5. So that's like 3 years of dominance. And back then we had people calling Ron Mei the Kazuha of StarRail. At the time, I thought that if a support character is released that's stronger than Ron Mei, it wouldn't be until much later in the game cycle. Sort of like how Kazuha lasted multiple years, I thought Ron Mei would last multiple years too. But literally not long after Ron Mei's release, in version 2.2, they released an even stronger support in Robin. Robin's a support that was meant for attack scaling characters, but she was so overtuned that she ended up being the best in slot support for basically any team. Except maybe Break, but even then, Robin had uses in Break teams just from her action advance. So Ron Mei didn't even last 3 patches, let alone 3 years. But it was still okay at the time because you needed 2 endgame teams, so Ron Mei could be relegated to your second team. However, if a support even stronger than Robin was ever released, then we really have ourselves a rough situation in terms of game power level. And lo and behold, in version 3.1, we already have a support that is more universal than Robin, and pretty much an upgrade in majority of the teams, which is Tribby. Now unless you're playing Super Break, there's no reason for you to even consider Ron Mei anymore, a character who at the time of her release, which was like a year ago, was far and away the strongest unit in the game. And just 1 year later, she is now an afterthought, a benched unit. And she was only released like just over a year ago. 1 year makes a character go from must pull to must skip. My whole point about this rant is if Hoyoverse can't even get a hold of balancing character kits, as they already are, without constantly making new characters outright replace older characters, and this doesn't exclude supports, it includes both DPS and supports, then who can trust them enough to keep a brand new game-breaking mechanic in check? In 1 year, we went from 2.0 MOC12, which had a total of 3 million HP, to 3.0 MOC12 with 15 million total HP. And you can argue that built-in mechanics like Nikador make the fight easier, but you can't deny that the same teams that were able to zero cycle 2.0 MOC12, such as the E0 Kafka E0 Black Swan DOT team, will probably struggle to just clear the 3.0 MOC12. I know that around Sparkle's release, I think 2.1, I uploaded my very first Blade Zero Cycle. That same team will probably not even be able to clear the current MOC12. And it was zero cycling the 2.0 MOC12. In just one version update, I had a team go from zero cycle to can't even clear. And so my trust in the balancing department has already been eroded long ago. I still enjoy the game, but when I see the devs want to put in more power creep mechanics into the game, it really makes me question what their intent is and who their target audience is. Because the hardcore players, I guess I fall into that category, we don't want this mechanic. And the casual players, once this mechanic gets added, they're only going to make the fights harder. And if casual players are already struggling with the endgame fights, them introducing more mechanics to get more power will just in turn make them want to increase the HP of enemies even further. And so this definitely can't be something that casual players want either. Also, giving these mechanics to newer characters just makes you feel like the older characters are getting more and more irrelevant. And I thought when they announced buffs for older units, they realized the problem with this concept of releasing a character only to make them irrelevant like 1 month later, because who would want to pull for a character just for them to be outdated the next month? Genshin did a good job of letting people pull for waifu over meta. It feels like in Star Rail, if you're pulling for waifus, you're really screwing yourself over unless your waifus happen to be the best characters in the game. And even then, they won't last that long. Maybe a year if you're lucky. So my biggest problem is that all of this feels incredibly tone deaf by the devs. They're either incredibly incompetent or they just don't care. And either way, it's a bad look on the company and a bad look on the game.